Hello and welcome to 6 Part. Today I'm gonna continue the story What If Deku Had the Infinity Gauntlet Part 8. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
How could this happen? He had the weirdest quirk in the world. His power was unmatched by anyone else's. He could have any quirk he wanted. He was the best. Anyone who dared to question his rule was put down by him. Even the 6 people who came after his stupid little brother couldn't beat him. How? But this man, this huge, powerful man, he hit him with everything. He could use every little quirk he had. The 8th person who used his opposite was matching him in some way. It wasn't just matching, it was overwhelming him. This man kept going even though he was hurt and bleeding. How? He couldn't even try to deal with the quirk. Every time he tried, he was hit hard and hard in the body. How? He finally had enough, so he charged up and used his strongest attack yet. The same one he used to kill the blonde man's predecessor. The man fought through it. He almost didn't believe what he saw because it seemed too good to be true. How? He was then grabbed by the wrist so hard that all of its bones turned to gravel. After that, he was thrown to the ground so hard that it made a mark on his body. When he tried to stand up, someone hit him in the chest with a fist and knocked him down. Then another that, based on the pain, must have made his lungs weaken. How? The huge man who held one for all hit him in the face over and over with his powerful fist. Each time he did it, his vision got worse, and with each punch, he saw flashes of different people as they hit him. First came that Shimura woman whose grandson he had just taken in, then that bald man with the black whip quirk, and then the rest of the users. In the last one, his own brother hit him in the face with his thin fist. How? He could no longer hear himself asking that. It was like his quirk was screaming that over and over. It was him who didn't know who the question was for. How? 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 What is happening? He could only hold up the least hurt hand at this point, shaking with fear and pain as he tried in vain to stop this man. Like a helpless kid who was trying so desperately to protect himself from bullies. He didn't think this was how it would end. He had thought about how he might lose, but he was always sure that he would win this fight. That was the last thing he saw, himself in the blonde man's eyes. But it wasn't him. The teen had dark green hair that was all over the place, emerald eyes that were wide with fear, a bloody face, and a body that was badly broken. A gold-plated gauntlet with 5 glowing stones was wrapped around his raised hand. After the man's fist hit him one more time in the head, he could no longer see anything. All for one woke up from his dream, or more accurately, his nightmare, all of a sudden. He started wheezing and coughing so hard that he was hard to stop. Even though machines were keeping him alive, he still didn't like having to breathe. He thought that letting go and dying would be best sometimes, but he couldn't do that. He was going to keep living as long as he could despite All Might and everyone in Hero Society. "I'm sorry," the faceless man said when he finally got his cough under control and saw the turrets aimed at him. "I've been having some bad dreams lately," he told the guards who he knew were watching through the cameras. He told her, "I'm sure you can understand." To calm his racing heart, he thought about the dream. He thought back to that time. When it looked like he was going to lose, all he could think to do was make fun of All Might about Nana Shimura. It really did work. That moment when the hero's anger got the best of him, he let down his guard, letting All for One pierce his middle and then throw his body as far away as possible. He was able to get back to the doctor even though he was blind. Izuku. At the end of his dream, he saw the boy he liked to think of as his other student. While Tamura really learned from him, Izuku was more like a student who could learn on their own and who he taught for a short time. Izuku already had his own plans and goals, but Tamura needed his help. All for One thought of himself as a child when he saw the boy's sneaky mind and drive. He came even though Izuku didn't need him. He still had to point him in the right direction for his stones. Even though he didn't have any quirks, he was strong on his own. He is truly an amazing boy. He thought to himself, maybe I should have told him. One for All's secret. Well, whatever. He'll have to figure that one out on his own. There was one small thing he purposely forgot to tell Izuku when they were talking about the quirk. If he gave his students everything, what kind of teacher would he be? There are times when they need to help themselves. While that, so what are we doing again? Twice asked in a tense voice. Something devious, I hope. As they broke into Chisaki's lab, Himiko Toga told him, we're here to get the files. Jin went after her and said, I don't remember Shigaraki telling us to do that. She smiled at him and said, oh, he didn't. She went to the computer and took a small drive out of her pocket. Izuku-kun asked me to do it. She looked for an open computer port and plugged it in. Let's see. He said plug it in and wait for the light to turn green. Over and over, twice said, you know I've been meaning to ask. Why are you working for Midoriya? What does he have that I don't? She asked with an interested cocked head, why wouldn't I work for Izuku-kun? He's super smart, super strong and super cute. Plus he introduced me to Mr. Stain. Those reasons don't seem good enough, he said. Even those seemed like shallow reasons to him. There is nothing that would make someone loyal. Himiko played with a strand of her blonde hair while she thought about what Izuku had said. Izuku laughed. They called you a monster. Because of your quirk. That's ridiculous. The absurdity of people sometimes. To label a quirk as abnormal and to claim that person is monstrous. In today's world. He held out his hand for her to take and said, listen to me, Himiko. You may be a bit extreme sometimes, but I think your quirk is amazing. Everyone has a place in this world, and so do you. Come with me and I'll show you. Himiko smiled widely and said, he just won me over, Jin. He also gave me some new toys to play with. Hey, what are you two doing in here? Asked someone behind Overhaul. When they turned around, they saw one of his employees at the door. All the evidence must have been thrown away when he came to delete all the files and damage the hard drives. With a snap of her fingers, Himiko said, we're stealing your files. You traitorous little. He was cut off as 4 needles on short rubber hoses shot him in the shoulders and neck. As they quickly drained his blood, more and more of these needles were stuck into him. The needles pulled out in a flash, leaving the man a bloodless shell. Twice didn't understand how she did that until he looked up at the ceiling and saw a group of about 8 small mechanical spiders hiding in the shadows. What the hell was that? He asked. Toga replied, my new toys. The drive light turned green, which meant she could take it out. The room began to shake as she spoke because of a loud, booming rumble coming from below. The blonde girl bit her lip in anger and said, oh, it looks like Izuku-kun is getting to work. Damn. I really wish I could see it. Let's go. Scared her more, or is it just me? He thought this twice as he saw her walk over the man's dead body that her robot spiders had just killed. I like it. Before a few minutes Izuku looked down at Chisaki while quickly deciding what he thought about everyone else in the area. His friends Eraserhead and Night Eye were next to him. Lemillion was standing in front of Eri to protect her. Chisaki was able to be alone. The one called Chronostasis wasn't awake. The person who tried to shoot Lemillion was held down but was still awake. Izuku thought, okay, I can work with this, as he thought about everything. With so many friends and a child nearby, he knew he couldn't just throw his power around. He would have to keep quiet. That's right, I hear that you named yourself after your quirk. Izuku pointed out. Not very creative if you ask me. Chisaki replied, I guess apotheosis is ascendance into godhood. Izuku smiled and took a few steps forward. It had a nice ring to it. Without waiting any longer, he thrust his armored hand upwards. With the power of the reality stone, he tore up a piece of the floor and threw it at the bad guy in the beak mask. He then opened a portal close to Lemillion and Eri as his next move. Go, now. The wall he threw at Chisaki was destroyed, and then a row of spikes hit the young hero and child right in the face. Mirio grabbed Eri and jumped out of the way. The spikes missed them, but they hit the portal's edge, which made it unstable and caused it to close. Something that many people there did notice. Izuku said, Erasure. He didn't need to be told twice, right? As soon as Chisaki was seen, he used his ability to temporarily erase the bad guys. Night Eye went over to help Lemillion, and Izuku and Aizawa quickly jumped in to grab Overhaul. When they got close enough, Chisaki yelled, Chrono. Out of nowhere, two arrow-shaped tendrils shot out of the back of the unconscious subordinate's hood. The one that was aimed at Izuku he avoided, but Erasure Head wasn't so lucky. One of them managed to scrape against his side, which made him move more slowly. Because of this, Overhaul quickly moved out of his line of sight and used his ability to make a forest of spikes around him. The whole floor became sharp and dangerous, so the teen had to flash warp out of the way. Damn it. Izuku cursed himself in his head for almost being caught off guard. He realized he had lost sight of Erasure Head when he looked around. Chronostasis was also gone, and it was likely that it had caught the underground hero. That would have to wait for another time. Overhaul carefully thought about what was going on. Even though Apotheosis was there, he hasn't been able to beat him right away yet. He must be keeping quiet for the sake of his friends. It's possible that he could use that help him. Chisaki looked down at Nemoto's hurt, unconscious body and saw that he was unconscious. Even if we have to fight Midoriya, who can't be stopped, I won't give up without a fight. Is that right, Nemoto? He used his quirk on his below him. Izuku yelled at Sir Night-Eye, why are you still here? Because he hadn't left with Lemillion and Eri yet. Something blew up behind him before he could try to open another portal for them. As he turned around, he saw the terrible things that would happen if Chisaki used his quirk to fuse with his subordinate. What came out of it was a horrible, four-armed monster. This is something his quirk can do. He quickly opened a portal so Night-Eye and the other two could get away. Overhaul tore up the ground between them and said, oh no you don't. They shut the portal down against Lemillion, Eri, and Sir Night-Eye's will, separating them. At least it looked like he knew that the portals could become unstable if a solid object hit the edge of them. With the Soul Stone, Izuku sent a wave of fire at the man and said, bastard. As the fight went on, Mirio ran over to Eri while still wearing his cape. He knew it was best to not get in the way. He really wanted to help, but Chisaki and Midoriya's skills were too dangerous, and anyone who got in the way would be killed. Mirio told his teacher, sir, we need to leave. But there were no ways out. Overhaul had locked them up, and the only way to get in or out was through one of Midoriya's portals. A flash of fire stopped them in their tracks. That quirk of yours can be used in a lot of different situations, Izuku said. Chisaki started by saying, let me ask you something. You were quirkless originally, so why would you corrupt yourself with that gauntlet? Why would you willingly infect yourself with a disease? It was Izuku who said, I don't see quirks as a disease. Quirks are the next step in human evolution and poor little me is just struggling to catch up. That's why I built the Infinity Gauntlet. Overhaul scowled and said, I see. He rushed at the boy and said, you're just as sick as the rest of this hero society. Izuku yelled back, I'm sick. Izuku met his charge and said, look at what you turned yourself into. As Flash moved behind the man and out of reach, he hit him in the back with a powerful one-for-all kick. It threw Chisaki across the floor like a rock skipping along the water. When the floor below Izuku turned back into spikes, he didn't bother to move. He just used his reality stone to break it up into small pieces, then quickly put them back together to make a big hand. Let's see if he can break something that's already broken. When Chisaki looked up, the attack was already coming at him. By raising all four of his arms, he turned it into even smaller pieces of rubble as soon as it hit. Izuku frowned when he saw that his creation was almost nothing but dust. If he didn't have to hold back, this would be a lot easier. Overhaul agreed, saying, he's definitely holding back. He also has his full attention on me. The man in the mask knew that more heroes would probably show up soon if he didn't get away soon. He wasn't going to leave without his bullets, though. He looked around the area and saw that annoying blonde hero carrying Eri away. That made him think of something. He threw a bunch of stone pillars at them with his two right hands. Izuku stopped the attack with his reality stone and said, really? With no thought, Chisaki slammed one of his left hands on the ground, sending a huge wave of stones toward Izuku on his right. As Izuku blocked the first attack, he stopped the next one with one for all on his right arm. Kai Chisaki had an extra hand that he could use even though both of his hands were already full. Die. Overhaul pulled what looked like a huge dagger out of the ground and aimed it straight at Midoriya's chest, which was not protected. Interesting. Izuku knew the attack was coming but did nothing to stop it. As he was being run through, he let out a choked gasp. The attack was so strong that it went right through his invisible defense. Izuku slouched forward, still stuck on the big rock spike and looking like he was dead. "It can't be," Sir Night Eye said as he stared in shock at what he saw. "Someone who took All Might's life and stole his legacy could not be killed so easily," they said. "No," Eri said, holding Mirio's cape even tighter. "That's it." Overhaul almost couldn't believe it. He did, however, have the upper hand, so Midoriya had to hold back. The only heroes left to fight were the other two. Then his attention went to the gauntlet that was still on Midoriya's dead left arm. The ability to take any quirk. That would be very helpful to have. He got close to the boy and reached out to grab the device. He didn't see Izuku's small smirk or the black sparks that started to form on his other hand. Chisaki was only a few inches away when all of a sudden a blast of burning fire hit him and threw him back. "Gah!" He screamed and thrashed around in pain, slapping his coat to put out the fire. It's funny, isn't it, when people think they've won and see something they want right in front of them? Izuku asked with a laugh. How quickly they develop tunnel vision and become blind to everything around them. Chisaki said, "That's not possible. You're dead. I ran you through." "Did you now?" Izuku asked. He reached up and tore off his green tie, then slowly tore the shirt open right up to show him where he was pierced. All for One is such an interesting quirk. As soon as I got my copy, I started going over every note and observation I made and playing around with all the quirks I got. His chest looked like it was made of a dark green sludge instead of skin. As that man did, I figured out how to use those quirks on certain parts of my body. That's what Izuku realized after watching the video of All Might and Sensei's fight at Kamino and trying to figure it out. The man was able to combine many strange abilities into one arm, which he used to try to punch the former hero out of existence but failed. He might be able to do the same thing on other parts of the body if he could do that. "I saw what you were doing and used the sludge quirk on my torso," Izuku said with a shrug as he cut the stone that was still stuck in him. He easily took the chunks off of him and then turned off the quirk, which made his chest look like it did before. Now where was I? He asked himself. After flashing back to where Chisaki was lying on the ground, he kicked the man hard in the ribs. Because of the power stone, Overhaul was thrown across the floor and through several pillars and spikes. Izuku slowly walked up to the hurt bad guy while floating off the ground. He reached for Chisaki's head as he sank down toward him. The soul stone was glowing in a scary way, ready to take on the quirk that was put in front of it. "No, I'm not going to lose like this." Overhaul slammed one of his hands on the floor, which broke apart and ate him up. Izuku had to jump back to avoid the spikes that came after he left. His green eyes looked around to find the man. He yelled to his two friends, "I've lost sight of him." X-ray eyes. He looked through the floor for Chisaki using a skill he got from the soul stone. He didn't see him, but he did see a rough tunnel going straight to Lemillion. "Look alive." As soon as he said those words, the ground behind Eri exploded, and that four-armed monster man jumped out, all of his wounds healed, and reached out to grab her. Mirio acted right away, and he used his quirk to move past the girl. He had both arms around Chisaki's wrists and held him back with all his strength. He couldn't kill the hero that was blocking him because his quirk was activated by touching it. His other arms, on the other hand, couldn't stop him. At that moment, Night Eye acted. He ran up behind the bad guy and grabbed his wrists to stop him from killing his student. A mouth appeared on Chisaki's palm and said, "You see this, Eri?" His quirk against the child was to say, "This is what happens when you don't follow the rules. Do you want to see these two die, you little monster?" Izuku stood over them and pointed his gauntlet at the bad guy. "Night Eye, Lemillion, move aside, move, now," he yelled angrily. Of course, they didn't answer his call. Moving or letting go would mean certain death for them, and Overhaul would only need one more step to grab Eri. Chisaki teased her, "How many people will you kill, Eri?" Eri looked with fear in her eyes as these heroes put their lives at risk for her. What did they have to do? She asked herself. She didn't care about her life. Not now that everything is over. Eri really thought she was a curse. Stupids. This is why I like to work alone. Izuku flew at the bad guy they were holding back in another attempt to steal his quirk. When Chisaki saw him coming, he turned around and threw Mirio away while throwing Night Eye straight at Midoriya. This was possible because his newly rebuilt arms had more muscle. Izuku pushed Night Eye off of him and said, "Move it." He reached out with the reality stone and moved the stone floor around to grab Overhaul's legs. He almost hit him with a blast, but Eri was still frozen with fear just inches away. He yelled at the hero, "Lemillion, get her away," while putting fire into his other hand. "Right." Mirio yelled and ran over to grab Eri out of harm's way. When Izuku used One for All to turn up the heat, something strange happened. Instead of making Endeavor's quirk stronger, the Power Stone set the fire on fire and almost put it out. That's not supposed to happen, the teen with green hair thought to himself. During that brief moment of distraction, Chisaki got away and hit the floor with his quirk, setting off a row of spikes that chased after the hero who took his prize. It was attack time, but Mirio had his back turned and couldn't see it. He could hear it, though. He wasn't able to use his quirk, which would have saved him but made Eri take the hit. He could only protect her with his body from the attack. Everything else didn't matter as long as he saved her. That blow never came. Instead, someone else's body hit his and pushed him out of the way. He quickly turned around and saw his mentor, who was stuck and missing an arm. "Sir." Mirio saw him cough up blood. He didn't have a quirk like Midoriya did that let him get out of this situation. Izuku quickly turned into the person next to him and cut the spike in half. He put his mitts on the wound and slung the hero's last arm over his shoulder. He pressed the time stone and frowned when nothing happened. "As I thought, the damage to the organs is too great for restoration to work." Night Eye's blood splattered on the metal plating of the gauntlet. "Why did you do that?" He laughed as he remembered what All Might had said about real heroes. "My legs moved on their own." He turned his head and looked Midoriya straight in the eyes. He could finally use his quirk on the boy now that the conditions were met. When Night Eye looked into his future, he was shocked and then horrified by what he saw. He had to tell someone, anyone, if he made it through this. Izuku got ready to fight back by looking over at Chisaki. The bad guy wouldn't get away with almost killing a hero on his watch, even if he used to be All Might's sidekick. A hole in the ceiling was blown open before either side could move. Riki Akatsukime's big body fell out of that hole. It was covered in cuts, burns, and ice chunks. Sky hero Yukio and Angel, also known as Uraraka, came down with him. The body of the unconscious bad guy fell to the floor, creating a big enough distraction for Chisaki to grab Eri again. He learned from his mistake and changed the shape of the floor under them instead of running up to the hero who was watching over her. A column that formed under the girl's feet threw her into the air. In midair, Overhaul grabbed her roughly and put one of his other hands on the back of her head. And he said, "Follow me or she dies." He looked up at the new hole and decided that was his way out. Izuku swore really hard. When Ochako walked up to him, he was still carrying Night Eye. "Angel, what happened? Where's Fahrenheit?" Uraraka quickly said, "He's hurt. We thought the villain was beat, but he got up again and Todoroki got seriously hurt. Iida has him." She got down on her knees and told him, "I need you to get Sir Night Eye out of here. He needs medical help right away," Izuku told her, handing her the hurt hero. Midoriya cut Mirio off when he tried to say, "Let me." The person using the gauntlet told them, "You've done enough here. Unless you can use your quirk with other people, then do your job and go rescue Erasure Head. The enemy captured him, remember. I'll save Eri. Yukio, go secure that big guy so doesn't get back up again." He let them go without a word. Izuku kept a tight grip on his captive while he looked up at his target and focused on Chisaki as he climbed up towards the hole. When Izuku jumped into the air, he flew very fast while dodging falling rocks. Overhaul was facing away from him and didn't see the threat coming. Eri, on the other hand, could see him just fine. Izuku smiled and looked her right in the eyes. It wasn't his usual cocky, scary smirk that he used on his enemies. Only the people he really cared about got this time's smile, which was one of those real ones. Eri woke up for some reason. A need to be saved or a new hope may have grown. She reached out her hand to him for some reason, and her quirk came on by accident because she was so stressed. Goo. Overhaul let out a gasp as Ares' power pushed him back into his original body. Nemoto, on the other hand, was also returned to form and fell off the platform. During the process, Eri also got away from him. She didn't see Chisaki turn around and grab her again while she was still reaching for Izuku. Nope, Izuku turned on the time stone when he saw what he was going to do. He was glad he had saved it for this very moment as he moved through the yellow bubble of time that was frozen in one place. He grabbed Eri and held her close with one arm while pointing the other arm at Chisaki, just as the limit was reached. The time went back to normal, and Izuku focused half of One for All into his finger. He then flicked it right at Overhaul, who was now staring blankly. He broke 2 fingers right away in the attack, but he didn't care about that right now. The bad guy was thrown like a rocket into the ground below as the pillar broke apart into gravel. Izuku didn't think twice about him as he pulled Eri out of the hole and up to the surface. He put her down gently in the street and checked her over to make sure she wasn't hurt. "Are you okay, Eri?" he asked. He reached out to touch her cheek, but yellow sparks from her horn zapped his fingers. Izuku was amazed as his broken fingers were miraculously fixed on his right hand. "I didn't think it had anything to do with the time stone's healing power or healing quirk. This was a whole different thing. Is this your quirk?" I asked. She nodded, but her red eyes showed worry. "She has no control," yelled a voice from behind them that they knew all too well. Something huge and gross crawled out of the hole. It had many horrifying limbs and a big, beak-shaped mouth with Chisaki inside. Izuku frowned as he finally started to understand Eri's quirk and how Overhaul was using her to make these bullets. Her quirk is called Rewind. Depending on how she's used, she could even turn a person into a monkey. That girl is a curse. You should hand her over to me. I'm the only one that can use her properly. She's not an object, Izuku yelled as he walked up to the thing that was calling itself a man and stood between the child and it. "She's just a little girl, you sick freak." He glared at the bad guy without any fear in his eyes. "I've done a lot of terrible things to get where I am, I'll admit that much, but I've never harmed an innocent child. That's a line I'd never cross." "How sad," he said as he reached out with one of his huge arms to crush him. "I'm going to tear down this diseased quirk society. I won't let a wannabe hero stand in my way. I don't care how much power you have." Izuku looked back at Eri and said, "Stay where you are." He said, "This will be over soon." Izuku already knew how the variables in this battle would change. He made the mistake of making himself a bigger target, and now they were out in the open. He only had to protect one person. "Great, I need a little more power now." He pointed his gauntlet at the bad guy and used the power and space stone to project his epidermal barrier outwards, making a huge wall that blocked the red fleshy hand that reached out to grab him. Saying, "Get out of my way." Overhaul slammed all of his hands on the ground, turning it into big thorns that were aimed right at the boy who was blocking Eri's path. In this case, Izuku opened a series of portals, catching each of the spiked pillars and placing the exit portals right on top of Chisaki's huge body. The man hit himself in the back and hurt it badly. Izuku made the most of the fact that he was stunned by that. He lifted the bad guy into the air with the reality stone after giving it the power of One for All. After getting him high enough that his quirk wouldn't work on anything, the young director slowly clenched his fist with his gauntlets on. Overhaul's huge body started to fold in on itself like a paper ball. Izuku laughed as he hit the man with his own body and crushed him. "Why?" A lot of tissue and bones were destroyed around Chisaki. As he charged down from the sky, he put together his new body into an even more horrifying shape. Weather Dominator. As Izuku used the stolen quirk, the clouds above them got darker. As he tried to improve it with One for All, he saw that it tried to turn off the quirk instead of turning it on, like Hell Flame had done before. In this case, Izuku was so mad that he poured his will into the stone and forced it to get stronger so that it could change the weather. Overhaul yelled at him, "Why can't you see what I'm trying to do?" He believed that only a person without any quirks would desire the same thing as him. A chance to get people back to how they were before these mutations ruined everything. "Oh, I see." Izuku slammed his power back at him. It was clear that the man was trying very hard to make his body strong enough to handle the Infinity Gauntlet. He saw the man break apart and put himself back together again. That was fine with Midoriya. It didn't matter how many times this disgusting jerk broke himself down and put himself back together. He would still lose in the end. Izuku smiled even bigger and said, "I may not be a hero, but that didn't stop me from making a few super moves." He drew lightning from the sky and aimed his black, sparking hand at the bad guy. "Here's one of my new favorites." He yelled, "Eri, cover your ears," and didn't look back. Just in time, Eri did what he said. Lightning trident. 3 lightning bolts shot out of the sky at the same time and hit the giant square in the chest. There was a loud, booming sound of thunder. Chisaki fell to the ground and hit the street. When he hit the ground, his whole body felt like it was on fire again. Izuku slowly walked over to him. He pushed the smoke and dust out of the way and looked at the bad guy's smoldering body, which looked like it was unconscious. There were bad burns all over his chest, mostly where the lightning hit him. Chisaki's real body was lying on top of a pile of fleshy tendrils, slumped over. Izuku made the same mistake he made when he laughed at Chisaki earlier. He turned his back on his defeated opponent. His body jumped up and screamed in pain and anger, "Ah!" One long, partly burned arm of the giant reached over and touched Midoriya, who was shocked. Eri jerked back when she saw the hand just inches from grabbing her. She instinctively put up her hands to block him, but she ended up shooting the power of her quirk outwards like a shooting star. The yellow power moved from Chisaki's hand to his whole body. He was split into 2 people again in an instant. Oops. Izuku didn't think twice about using the chance to his advantage. He walked up behind the man and grabbed both of his wrists, bending both of his arms awkwardly behind his back so the man couldn't use his quirk. "Well, isn't this funny?" Izuku asked. With a violent jerk and twist, he broke the joints in his arms and then threw him on his back. Since his target couldn't move, he used the space stone to make 2 small portals that trapped his now useless arms in case he tried to do anything else. The exit portals were high in the air, far from any solid objects. Izuku laughed as he walked around his dead body and stood on top of him. "You called Eri a curse, but she just brought you back down to earth. I don't believe in karma, but that kind of cosmic justice is hard to ignore." He cocked his foot back and swung it like a pendulum, kicking Chisaki in the face and taking off his plague doctor mask. Izuku saw that his pocket had something sticking out of it. He reached into the man's coat, took out the small red case, and opened it. "So these are what you tormented and experimented on Eri for?" Chisaki growled at him and said, "That's mine." He tried to move but couldn't. "I think I understand you in some ways. I used to dislike quirks too, mostly because I didn't have any." Midoriya frowned as he looked at the bullets. Childish envy and all that. "It was during my research that I came to the realization that quirks are not really all that special. They are merely tools we are born with. Like hands and teeth. Biological tools that evolution gave us." He used Hell Flame to burn the case. It made Chisaki very angry and scared to see his work slowly turn into slag. "An evolution moves forward, not backward," the green-eyed teen said as he leaned over the man and put his helmet over his mouth. By using the soul stone, he slowly and painfully took Kai Chisaki's quirk. "No, not at all, no." His screams were muffled by the armored hand that was over his mouth. His boss was all he could think about as his sight got worse. He was raised by the man who took him in. The man that he put to sleep. The man he failed. He let go of the villain without any quirks and left his unconscious body there, saying, "Pathetic little man." He moved slowly toward the child he was watching out for. He smiled to make her feel better and say, "It's okay now, Eri. He can't hurt you anymore." "Stay back," Eri yelled as she dropped to her knees and held herself up. He moved toward her and asked, "What's wrong?" "Please, I can't." She let out a burst of yellow energy. "That's right." He told her she couldn't control her quirk. Izuku held up his arm to block the light and thought about what he could do. "Damn you. Erase your head. When I need you, where are you?" The person who used the gauntlet thought about her quirk as much as he could. He knew not to get too close. His defense probably kept people from hurting him, which is why he only had to get his fingers fixed the first time. That wouldn't keep him safe for long. He also couldn't turn off her quirk without taking it away from her. That he wouldn't do to a child who hadn't done anything wrong. He said, her quirk seems to be taking the form of energy. Exciting from her horn. Hold on. Power. That could work. Izuku came up with a stolen quirk and called it out. Energy conversion. He pointed his gauntlet hand at her and let the black and purple tendrils spread out. They grabbed her power and slowly took it away. He was happy that it worked. Izuku slowly moved toward her until all of this rewind energy was gone. When everything was gone, Eri's quirk stopped for good, and she passed out forward. She was caught by the person wearing the gauntlet before she hit the ground. Gotcha. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding as he held her small body in his arms. He still had to use all the energy he took from her in some way. He focused it on his right hand and made a small, dense neon purple ball. He didn't wait any longer and threw it into the still dark clouds. It exploded, clearing the way for the sun to shine again. That little kid has so much power. He saw a hint of redness on her sleeping face as he looked down at it. He checked her temperature by putting the back of his hand on her forehead. She's on fire. Her quirk making her do that. Just then, the dragon hero Ryukyu flew out of the hole and showed himself. Izuku looked at her sharply and said, lose track of something. Yukyu took a deep breath. Even though he was bigger than the teen, he was still scary. He pointed to the body of Riki Akatsukame, which was lying off to the side. That dragon hero said, sorry. I'm taking this girl to the hospital. I trust you heroes can at least finish up here, he said. Before she could answer, he opened a portal and helped Eri pass through it, leaving behind a Yakuza group that was completely destroyed. He took off the hand that was covering his face and said, tell me again. He asked Chisaki, who was lying on a prison gurney, which of us is the leader now? With a sneer. This man had both of his arms in a cast because Midoriya had hurt them. Looks like Apotheosis really roughed you up. He mocked me. He held out the blue case and looked at it. They were destroyed in the earlier battle. As much as he would have loved to get the finished bullets, he would have to make do with these test bullets. Trying to get Overhaul to laugh, he said, I'll make sure to put these to good use. The man just stared blankly into space. Not even when Compress took his left arm to get back at him did anyone react. Tamura was shocked by what Midoriya had done to hurt him so badly. Really nothing to say. Shigaraki, the police, and the heroes will be here soon. This needs to end quickly, Compress said. He scowled at his subordinate and said, in a moment. His attention was drawn to Chisaki, who was mumbling something. I'm sorry, what was that? The man who had lost said in a low voice, you can't beat him. No one can. He seemed to be even more angry after hearing those words. He started to break down his last arm and said, you know what I think. Maybe someone who hates quirks shouldn't have won, Tamura said with a smirk as he looked at the man's painful grimace. He decided that he'd rather this guy live and suffer than let his quirk kill him, so he cut off the rest of the arm. Okay. Let's go, he said. He turned to leave while putting his dad's hand back over his face. The masked magician said, too late. He pointed off into the distance, where a group of police cars was quickly coming up behind him. It seemed like out of nowhere, a wall of blue fire appeared along the highway and blocked their way. Miss me. They looked to the left and saw a familiar figure coming toward them. Dabi wore his usual clothes with a few new things added to them. His black metal gauntlets went up to his biceps and had metal plating that looked like scales and sharp points on the tips of the fingers that looked like claws. The answer from Tamura was, like itchy skin. What are you doing here? Dabi replied, the kid sent me to make sure you get away. Shigaraki yelled at him, what level is he at? No game. He still considers you a friend for reasons that are beyond my understanding. Dabi made a joke. Get out of here. I'll help you get away, he said. Tamura looked at him for a moment before getting back into the truck, and Mr. Compress followed him. With a happy grin on his face, Dabi watched them drive off. He then turned to look down at Overhaul. Wow, that must hurt, the scarred man said as he lit a blue flame in the palm of his hard-covered hands. This clever little support thing was something Midoriya made so that his quirk wouldn't hurt him anymore. He put his fire to the man's bleeding stump and burned the wound shut. This is going to hurt even more. Trust me, I know a thing or two about severe burns.
Gah! Chisaki screamed in pain. Dabi made fun of him and said, "Ah."
It hurts so much. He pressed his finger to his cell phone when he saw the man pass out from pain. Suck it up. We don't want you bleeding to death now, do we? Dragon Haria, no. Tamura didn't kill Hima, I have him now. When he told his boss about his success, he got new orders. Got it. A portal showed up on the ground next to them. Dabi cut through the chains that were holding Chisaki down, picked him up, and then threw him hard into the portal. He followed and jumped into the same portal, making sure no one was looking again. Then hospital. The man named Izuku waited in the room. He had his hands clasped together and his eyes were closed. He looked like he might have been meditating. As the team thought about his most recent battle, his right index finger was moving along the power stone on his gauntlet without him realizing it. A bug, something I might have missed. Why now? His mind wondered why One for All was having problems. Was the quirk not working right? It wasn't acting this way before. He didn't get it. This was something that none of the other stones did. All for One didn't break down on him, and those two quirks were made from the same stuff. Putting these questions aside for now, he chose to pay attention to the eyes he thought were looking at him. He opened his eyes and saw Aizawa, an underground hero and UA teacher, staring at him. I see that Lemillion was able to successfully rescue you. Where is he? The man asked. The other man just stared at him blankly for a few seconds before answering. Aizawa walked over and sat down a few chairs away from him. Upstairs getting checked out by the medical staff. Good. Izuku looked at him for a while before changing the subject. When he learned about this man from Uraraka, he always had a question for him. Your Class 1A's homeroom teacher. Your former students had mixed things to say about you. It didn't change how Aizawa looked when he asked, is that so? What did they say? That you were a good teacher overall, even though your dishonest ways could be annoying at times. The person wearing the gauntlet smiled at him. A logical lie was needed sometimes to bring out their best and push them to their fullest potential, the underground hero said. Personally, I prefer the more honest approach. I told Iida, Uraraka and Todoroki the truth about my goals and how my department operates. Izuku told him. I doubt you told them everything, Aizawa said. Like many others, he thought that he had some bad guys working for him behind the scenes. They were pretty sure that the Midoriya agent in a mask was the hero killer. Well, they aren't allowed to know about some things in my department, the teen with green hair said with a shrug. It's mostly just a bunch of secret government stuff. They don't need to worry about that. He was intentionally vague so that he wouldn't give away any information that could be used against him. Can I ask you something, Mr. Aizawa? He nodded and gave him a sideways look as he said, yes. I'm not sure if All Might told you, but originally I was planning on using my Infinity Gauntlet to become a hero. He told Izuku. I was going to try out for UA and show the world that I could be a hero using science and imagination to surpass any and every quirk. To show everyone who grew up like me that the world doesn't have to be unfair. So I was wondering. Had I gone down that path and had I been accepted into the school, would you have allowed me to be in your class? Because they were honest, the underground hero said, I'm not going to lie. If you had potential and the drive, I think you would have done well in the hero course. Now though, after some of the things you've done, you don't belong in the hero course. With a laugh, Izuku asked, because I'm still technically quirkless. Aizawa told the boy, no, because you took the easy way. The boy stopped and looked at him very carefully. You didn't even try to be a hero. You could have gotten what you wanted if you became a hero. It would have been much harder to change society, but you choose the easier path instead. He glared at the hero and said, I can assure you, my path was anything but easy. What I did was the only way for everyone to see what I saw. What did you see? He was asked by Aizawa. When I became a criminal consultant, I saw the bad side of our society based on heroes, he said, turning his head away from the man and staring into space. Do you know what I saw out there? Shota Aizawa didn't answer because he had a good idea of what he was talking about. Pro-heroes taking bribes, ignoring crimes that wouldn't make them more popular, people with quirks they couldn't control being called bad guys, and worst of all, how quirkless people are treated as less than human. What right did All Might, the great peace sign, let that happen? Why can only powerful people make things different? It's not fair at all. That's when I understood how badly our society is broken. Our most important source of justice was just a lie. Izuku glared at the wall. All Might didn't hold the world together. He kept his perfect fantasy world together with a hero lie that didn't really exist. So your new goal was to fix this? I'm still not sure how what you've done will make society better, Aizawa said with doubt. If you don't think about the long term, that's why, Izuku said. By getting rid of all the fake heroes and showing All Might to be a fraud, by almost bringing the system to its knees, I've finally made it possible for everyone to ask questions. They can now see what I see after I made them look closely at their heroes. When people are unhappy, things will inevitably get better. Now things will be fair. Everything wasn't fixed in the first place because All Might and the other heroes made sure everyone followed the rules. Aizawa summed up the kid's plan in his head. He admired the boy's understanding of how the system worked and where the holes he could exploit were. But Midoriya's way of thinking was flawed. His unhealthy obsession with fixing everything and making it fair, as he called it, would only lead to disaster. One thing Izuku Midoriya hadn't yet realized was that he would eventually reach a dead end. People would only put up with his so-called improvements for so long before it felt like tyrannical control. What will happen when they stop going along with him? What will happen when the people turn on Midoriya? That's what scared Aizawa. All that power in the hands of an obsessed boy who felt rejected and hurt by society. What would he do when everything fell apart? Probably something terrible. Izuku didn't want to sit with the man in awkward silence, so he got up to check on Todoroki. He needed to go to the bathroom and wash the blood off his gauntlet first. Aizawa watched him leave, and when he got around the corner, he reached into one of his pouches and felt the small metal object that was still there. This was the bullet that caught him off guard and caused him to be hit and captured while he was fighting right next to Midoriya. He had no idea why he took it, and Aizawa had no plans to use it. He didn't think it would do anything if it hit Midoriya, but something told him it might come in handy someday. You never know when you might need to get rid of someone's quirk for good. Bathroom. Izuku used water and a cloth to wipe off Sir Night-Eye's blood from his device. He wasn't afraid of Bluta, he had worked with it before, but he would rather keep his hands as clean as possible. He looked down at the soul stone in his palm and thought about the two quirks he had gained during this whole ordeal, Crystal and Overhaul. He was already thinking of all the useful things that could be done with Overhaul. He looked in the mirror and saw that his shirt was still torn open. He touched it with his bare hand because he was interested in this strange habit. Overhaul. In an instant, his black button-down shirt was torn apart and put back together without any damage, though it was missing a few buttons. After using the bathroom, he walked down the halls until he reached the room where his loyal knights were. Izuku walked right in without knocking. Shoto Todoroki was sitting up in bed with some bandages around his head, and Uraraka and Iida were sitting in chairs next to the bed, still wearing their battle gear.
Okay, so how did this happen? Izuku told them. He wasn't mad, but he was tired. Shoto said without a doubt, it was my fault. I let down my guard. He was angry that he had made the same mistake when he fought Katsuki Bakugo. I thought my opponent was defeated, he said.
Mistakes teach us the most. The person who used the gauntlet said, even I make mistakes. I'm not going to tell you what you did wrong and scold you for it after you've already done that. I don't think you three will be able to work together perfectly right away. He then turned to Uraraka and asked, do you have anything to add? Well, our combination move worked pretty well. She was happy.
Mega Hail? Izuku smiled back at her and then looked at Iida.
The boy in glasses summed up, I was able to successfully retrieve all the injured police and heroes. Part of him was scared that Midoriya knew about the message he sent to Asui, but he didn't know, and that was always the scariest thing about dealing with Izuku Midoriya. At your speed, I'm sure that went quickly and well. He agreed, just put everything in the computer when we get back to base. Izuku smiled and walked away without saying another word, as if he were thinking about something else. Ochako called him by his first name, Izuku.
Is everything okay? Midoriya slowly turned around to look at her. He finally replied, yeah, everything is fine. But it wasn't really true. He had a lot on his mind and needed to get things done, but he didn't want to bother her with his problems. Izuku left the hospital room, and Iida and Shoto watched him go. They too thought something was wrong with him. While Izuku was leaving the room, he went to where Eri was being treated. He couldn't visit her because she had a high fever and no one knew what was wrong with her quirk, but he could watch her rest through the window. The Gauntlet user wasn't paying full attention to the doctor until he said something about Sir Night-Eye's condition. What was that? Izuku asked, taking his eyes off the child who was asleep. He was a hero, Sir Night-Eye. The doctor told them, his injuries are too bad. We did everything we could, but he won't make it. Midoriya's emotionless face didn't show anything. What room does he belong in? He said in a serious tone. Sir. Mirio got down on his knees next to the bed. It broke his heart to see his teacher and mentor lying weak and dying. Tubes were going in and out of him, and bandages were wrapped around the stump where his arm used to be. The staff had told him that these wounds were fatal and that nothing could save him, so he was ready for what he was about to see. When Night-Eye's tired eyes touched his pupil, he whispered, Mirio. I'm glad you're safe. I'm sorry. The blonde was crying now. I failed. This happened to you because I wasn't strong enough. You were great, the dying man said with a smile. You gave your life to save Eri. You're a true hero, Mirio. He coughed lightly in pain. He didn't want the young man thinking it was his fault when in reality it wasn't. Night-Eye's legs moved on their own, just like All Might would have wanted. His thoughts then drifted back to what he saw in Midoriya's future when he got a chance to use his quirk on him. He had to tell Mirio before he died. Mirio, it's unclear to me whether the future can be altered or not. My picture of All Might's future was skewed, so things might not turn out the way I thought they would. What do you mean, sir? What did Tagata ask? Sir said, I need to tell you what I saw in Izuku Midoriya's future. Night-Eye put out his hand and gently pulled his pupil closer so that no one else could hear. The blonde's eyes grew wide as Sir talked about what he saw, and he didn't even understand much of it. When he was done, Mirio pulled away to look at his teacher. Now that you know, maybe you can stop it. Take note of my warning. I don't understand how to stop that. I have no idea what happened. You said everything just vanished, Mirio said. Everything went blank because there was no future that I could see past that point. Night-Eye blew his nose. It was like everything just stopped. Sir, what should I do? Mirio begged. I don't know, but you should keep Eri away from him, the hero who was slowly dying told him. What Midoriya does in the future will have something to do with her. The former partner looked out the window, and Mirio followed his gaze to see Izuku Midoriya walking into the observation room. The director took one cold look at the hero on his deathbed before turning around and leaving without saying a word. Mirio mentally promised to talk to him later, but for now he had to be here with Sir in his last moments because he owed it to the man. Another room. Wow. Izuku's eyes widened at the state of Kirishima. Since there was nothing he could do for Night-Eye, he went to check on the other injured parties. The red-headed boy was nearly completely covered in bandages. You brought new meaning to being a human shield. The man shrugged and smiled. You can't blame a man for trying. Izuku smiled back and said, you're right. That's all I ask in the end. For the heroes to always try to do their best and get better. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit and pulled out a small white card. He also grabbed a pen from the doctor's clipboard and wrote something on the card. Right now I only have 3 volunteers in my hero training program. He gave the hurt boy the card and said, these are your old classmates. I'm sure you remember them. Defense Knights. Hiroshima read out loud the title. That's the real name of the program the HRD uses to train heroes. If you're interested, you'd be moved right from UA into the program, Izuku said as he started to list all the good things that would happen to Eijiro. The redhead, on the other hand, was barely paying attention as he looked at the words that were written at the bottom of the card. Name of the code. Aegis. Shield of the Gods. He didn't dislike the name, Aegis, but Kirishima liked his own hero name better. He also couldn't say no to Midoriya's tempting offer, though. When Kirishima gave Izuku back his card, he stopped talking all of a sudden. He looked at him with green eyes that were looking at him strangely. Thanks for the offer. I really appreciate that the director of the HRD is interested in my career, but I'll have to politely decline, the teen with the bandage said in a voice that didn't sound rude. May I ask why? Izuku gave him an odd look. The 3 former UA students he offered this chance to didn't say no. Iida didn't take it at first, but with some encouragement, he saw the benefits and joined on his own. He was proud and said, "Look, I'm sure your program is great and all, but as a man I need to find my own way to become a hero." Izuku smiled and agreed with him. "Very well then," he said as he used the overhaul quirk a second time to shred the card into tiny pieces. "I wish you the best on your path." Red Riot. He really wanted a 4th member for his knights, and someone with a good defensive quirk would have been a great addition to the team. Oh well, everyone had their own plan. He turned around and waved goodbye as he walked out of the Hero in Training's hospital room. As he walked down the hospital's main hall, he thought about the other people who might have been a good fit. I need to check my list. Find the next possible member. Hey, one of his thoughts was cut off by the sound of a voice calling him. He turned to the left and saw Mirio Tagata coming at him quickly. Ah, Lemillion, so it looks like Sir Night-Eye has finally died, Izuku said without much thought. He wasn't fully paying attention to the other teen when he spoke. Mirio was furious in silence. The careless way he said that made him really angry. Why did not you save him? Mirio finally asked him what was making him mad. Excuse me, he didn't get the question. Sir, you could have saved him. Mirio asked, I saw how powerful you are. Why didn't you save him? Izuku shrugged and said, I couldn't. The blonde student said, yes, you could have. No, someone with a gauntlet held up their gadget and said, I couldn't have. The time stone can't heal something if too many pieces are missing. He was doomed from the moment he took that blow for you. He should have stayed a sidekick, since he has that weird habit. It was stupid for that idiot to go into battle without armor or a proper offensive support device. Izuku went on and on about all the things he thought the now-dead hero did wrong. If you want my opinion, he had no business being there anyway, he said. When Midoriya said mean things about Mirio's master, Mirio finally lost it and slammed his body against the wall behind him. He grabbed the front of his shirt and slammed it down hard. Be quiet, yelling. The young hero yelled. Izuku didn't even move when he was pushed against the wall. He kept his emerald eyes on the other person's blue ones. Izuku warned him, be careful, I just fixed my shirt. I'll assume this outburst is part of your grief over Sir Night-Eye. Were the two of you closer than I thought? What's the matter with you and me? You don't care that he's dead, that's my mistake. Mirio was about to cry. Izuku tried to explain, I care, but as I said, there's nothing I could have done for him. I wish there was something I could do, but there isn't. So why get upset about things I can't change when I could focus on things I can? Mirio finally let go of his shirt. Take this example. What do you think Eri will feel when she learns that one of the heroes who tried to help her died? He paused, seeing the older teen's eyes widened in realization. Exactly. It would be best not to tell her right now. Izuku put his hand on Mirio's shoulder and said, even though I said he was stupid, I do think Sir Night-Eye was a brave man for what he did. You might think it's cold, but I'd rather not think about things I can't change and instead look forward to the future. Izuku thought to himself as he walked away, he's got a good handle on that temper. I honestly expected him to hit me. He mentally added him to the list of possible attackers. The younger teen was angry and ready to give Midoriya a piece of his mind, but he found himself agreeing with some of the younger teen's points of view. After all, he couldn't do anything about Sir protecting Mirio and Eri with his own body and dying because of it. Plus, Midoriya had nothing to do with the future seeing hero, so of course he wouldn't be upset about it. In fact, Midoriya has been quoted on the news saying that he sees heroes as nothing more than public servants and that they should act like heroes if they want to be real heroes. This could explain his cold attitude. It wasn't right to look at people that way, though. Heroes were people too, and Midoriya had obviously forgotten that. After H.Q. Can you remind me why we're going to keep this garbage alive? Dabi asked Stain, who stood next to him as they looked down at Kai Chisaki's body. The man was bandaged and healed as best they could, and he was lying on a bed in one of the many prison cells they had at the base. He was the first prisoner they had ever had. Stain said, "Our boss wants him alive for information." As they left the cell, it locked itself behind them. In case the bloodsucker failed her mission, he added, Chisaki will have to be tricked into giving him what he wants. Dabi was following his teacher and confirmed, torture. What happens after that? Kill him. No, Stain said, sounding upset. Midoriya doesn't kill. I think he'll ask me to do it for him. Why does he not kill? The scarred man asked. The truth is I think he's afraid of death, Stain said. He helped me hurt and kill a few heroes, but he never used the killing blow himself. That's the kind of person Midoriya is. They left the prison area of the base through the main door. Dabi thought to himself, that's why he didn't kill Endeavor. Well, he also thought that sorry excuse for a man should live in the ruins of his old life. The hero killer could at least somewhat agree with that. They kept talking as they walked to Midoriya's office. They went there and saw the boy they were talking about. He was already there, leaning against his desk with his arms crossed. The guillotine. Dragon, Izuku said to them, where is Chameleon? Right here. As Himiko walked into the office, her most recent mask was already falling off like white sludge. Izuku sternly told him, put on some clothes. Did you get it? He told her to get dressed, but she smiled and showed him the portable drive she was holding instead. Izuku used the reality stone to pull the drive out of her hand and into his. Good job, everyone, he said with a smile as he looked at what he thought were the shadows of his knights. He then went to his computer and plugged it in. Okay, so can we kill our guest now? Dabi asked with interest. No, I need to make sure of something before I decide what to do with Kai Chisaki. That seemed to back up what Stain said about Midoriya not liking killing. Dismissed. He waved the three off without even looking at them. Oh, one more thing. Dabi. He stopped the man with dark hair as he was leaving. Yes. Dabi stopped at the door and thought about what his boss wanted. Izuku, who was still looking at his computer, said, from now on, you and Todoroki will train together. Dabi said, I don't think that's a good idea. Then why is that? Izuku finally looked up from the screen and met the other person's intense gaze. They stared at each other for a short time before Dabi finally blinked and turned away. It's not important. Never mind, the bad guy said, and then he left him alone. Izuku heard Chisaki's words and wanted to know how the man was making these bullets with Eri. He had a good idea, but he wanted to be sure. Please don't get upset. Mei frowned at the robotic voice because it was still too monotone and echoed. She had been working on teaching Nemesis a few words. Izuku didn't like the idea of their pet project being able to talk at first, but she was able to turn him around quickly. Hi, hey there, how are you? Hello. She tried different greetings with different tones and effects. The voice came from lines she recorded herself with a microphone. She just changed the pitch and added some effects on the computer. The voice still sounded too monotone for her taste. It needed more personality. Mei did her best, but she wasn't a very good singer. I'll ask Izuku. He's a great actor. If anyone could make Nemesis sound like a real person, it would be him. She quickly called his office upstairs to see if he was free for a quick thing, but he didn't answer. That was strange, since he always answered when he saw her ID on his office phone. She also tried her video chat through his computer, but he wasn't responding to that either. Hatsume got up from her desk and left her lab, curious to find out what was going on. Something wasn't right with Izuku because he wasn't answering her calls. After going through a few hallways and an elevator, she reached the main hall of the base, where she saw the boy in question, trudging forward angry while being surrounded by his former bad guys, Stain, Dabi, and Toga. Izuku. When Mei called out, Midoriya stopped walking and seemed to notice her. It was a quiet voice that said, Mei, you need to go back to your lab and stay there for a while. He never used that tone when he talked to her. She told him, I was hoping you could help me with something. She looked at him and felt scared. She put her hand on his shoulder and said, "May." He then told her to go back to her lab and stay there. Izuku's eyes were hard and dark. "I need to do something." He promised to come by soon and help you with whatever you needed. "Please leave." "Okay." Hatsume was worried now, and she had forgotten about her plans. His bad guys didn't say a word. Those three rarely acknowledged her anyway, so she didn't care. Izuku walked past her, and Stain, Dabi, and Toga followed. She watched him leave, wondering what was wrong with him. May finally decided to do what he asked and wait for him in the lab. She would question him later, that much was certain. Office of the UA Principal. Nezu looked at the piece of paper in his hand and said, "This is an interesting development." It was a message written in code. It was delivered by Suyu Asui, a student in Class 1A, and given to Midnight, who then gave it to the principal. The rated R hero said, "It looks like Iida gave it to her. It looks like one of Midoriya's loyal knights isn't so loyal after all," the white thing said with a smile. "Can you figure it out?" Midnight asked. "Of course," Nezu said as he drank his tea, "give me no more than 20 minutes. She said, "I don't like this." The teacher agreed, "Neither do I. If Midoriya finds out, what do you think he will do to Iida?" Midnight was interested. "Not good." Nezu looked back at the coded message and told her to leave. "Please figure out what this says now." Midnight thought to herself as she left, "Shota is not going to like this at all." Her friend and coworker did not want to hear that Iida was once again putting himself in serious danger on purpose. Hospital. To get something to drink, Uraraka walked around the waiting area. She had taken off the top part of her white armor, helmet, and mecha wings, leaving her in just leggings and a black tank top. As she walked, she stretched her back and arms a bit, enjoying not having to wear that armor. "Hey, wing girl," she saw Najire Hado appear, which almost made Ochako jump out of her skin. "Goose, you scared me," Najire-chan, the girl with brown hair said with a laugh. Nojire said, "Sorry. Anyway, what are you doing?" I told Ochako the truth. "Looking for a vending machine or a water fountain." "Can I help you?" Najire said out loud, "You were amazing out there." "Oh, thank you," the younger girl said as she took the compliment. "So you fly with those metal wings, huh? That's pretty cool," she said. "In fact," Uraraka said, "I fly with my quirk. The wings just help me stay balanced and control my speed and direction." "That's cool," the taller girl said, almost too close to the other girl. "What's your hero name?" "Well, I used to go by the name Uravity, but I chose to use the codename I was given." Urara told her, "Angel. That's really sweet. The person who gave you that name must really like you," Najire gushed, turning the other girl's face a light shade of red. Uraraka said, I'm not sure about that. We're just friends." "Okay," Najire said, giving up on the subject completely. The older girl then asked Uraraka a lot of personal questions about her quirk, how she fights, that move she did with Todoroki, and other things she didn't want to talk about. While they talked, Mirio Tagata kept a close eye on Eri while she rested in an observation room upstairs. He thought about what Sir Night-Eye had told him before he died. Neither of them understood what the vision he described meant. Midoriya was lying in a crater in the middle of an empty battlefield, hurt and bleeding. He smiled, even though he looked defeated, and blood came out of his mouth. Then everything went white. Sir said he couldn't see any future after this point. They didn't know what that meant. All they knew was that it had something to do with Eri. What does Eri have to do with this? Mirio asked himself. He had been thinking about how the girl fit into Midoriya's plans for the future and why it depended on her. He knew he had to keep Eri away from Izuku Midoriya, but the real question was how. The boy was too strong, both physically and politically, and had a huge impact on their society. It reminded him of when All Might told him how the country was when All for One was in charge. But he didn't like being compared to that man because Midoriya wasn't evil. He had good qualities and wasn't a monster or a killer like those he hung out with. He just needed a push in the right direction, and maybe the future that Sir Night-Eye saw could be avoided. Otherwise, why am I here? What was that? Chisaki asked quietly. Izuku looked down at the man on his knees and saw that he looked broken and defeated. Some people would think that this punishment was enough, but not Izuku. Not after seeing pages and pages of what he could only call torture done to one little girl. Izuku had only seen such scientific cruelty done to lab rats and test animals. On top of that, the man apparently used his quirk to kill and restore poor Eri over and over again to make those cursed bullets. He was so angry that he told Stain, Dabi, and Toga to go get him. They dragged the now armless Chisaki out of his cell and into the large, high-tech training room. Izuku paced the room for an hour while waiting for the man to wake up, thinking about what he was going to do with him and losing his temper. When Chisaki finally woke up, the young man had finally made up his mind. Someone who used the gauntlet told Midoriya, "You're here to pay for your crimes." The three bad guys looked at him with interest because they had never seen him so riled up before. Chisaki said, "All I tried to do was make things normal for people again." Was that so wrong? Izuku just stared at him. "You should understand more than anyone else. Don't you hate these dirty changes that people call quirks?" Izuku said, "Quirks are just tools. Like a hand for holding things or teeth for chewing. Tools made from living things, nothing else." He sighed and said it again because he didn't like having to say it. "But you don't find yourself here on your knees at my mercy because of what you were trying to do. You were here because of what you did." Izuku stooped down to look the bad guy in the eyes. His emerald eyes were filled with rage. "I want to know how many times." Chisaki choked back the words. "How many times did you hurt Eri? How many times did you break her and put her back together?" Overhaul stutteringly said, I don't know." Izuku's right hand reached out and grabbed his throat. He tightened his grip and said, "You're a smart man, so give me a number." When Chisaki still didn't answer, he shook him hard and said, "Give me a damn number." 100. He spat out the only number he could think of, at least 100 times. He wasn't sure if that would make the boy happy or not, but he hoped it would. That wasn't so hard, was it? The other person let go of Izuku's neck with a happy grin. "That's a good 3-digit number for me to work with." He took off his gray suit jacket and rolled up the sleeves of his black dress shirt. "Here's something you should know about me, Kai Chisaki. I believe in fairness and balance," he said as he got ready. "Things like an eye for an eye, for example. Also, I think punishments should fit the crime." He reached out again with his right hand, grabbed Chisaki by the face, and used the quirk overhaul. The man's eyes went wide as he was almost destroyed and then put back together in an instant. "Ku." The man coughed up blood. His insides felt like they were on fire, and his blood flow wasn't right either. As he did it again, Izuku said, "I guess the organ placement is a bit off." This time, when Chisaki was rebuilt, the organs were in the right place, but some of his skin was missing. "Don't worry, I'll get this down eventually. There are still 98 more practice runs to go, after all." He killed and revived the man 3 times. "That's 3. Hey there." Izuku looked at the 3 ex-bad guys who were just standing there and said, "I brought you all here to keep track for me. So begin to count." When Stain saw the boy he had grown to respect take Chisaki apart and put him back together, he said, 3. He agreed with Midoriya's philosophy that the justice system didn't always punish bad people the way it should. As a former hero killer, he had seen plenty of injustices and had even done his own brand of justice on a few people who deserved it. It didn't bother him if the kid wanted to treat himself and give Midoriya a proper punishment. What surprised him was how calm Midoriya was acting despite how angry he looked. 4. Dabi also watched with interest. Stain said that Midoriya didn't normally get his hands dirty and that he didn't have the stomach for this kind of brutality. But here he was, killing another person over and over again because he felt sorry for a little girl. He couldn't help but wonder what was so special about her. 5. Toga kept counting with a dreamy look in her eyes. All that blood and gore was like watching a work of art come to life. She loved this side of Izuku, the cruel, angry, cruel side that he rarely showed. She found it all very attractive. 6. Izuku looked down at the deformed mess of a person. This man had to pay for what he did to Eri. He'd dealt with bullies all his life, and Chisaki was one of them. Bullies are all cowardly and weak on the inside. He hadn't even started yet, and the man was already shaking and screaming. 7. The person who was using the gauntlet didn't like hearing Chisaki's pain cries. Come now. 8. He sneered as he destroyed and rebuilt him again. If Eri could handle this, then a grown man like you should have no trouble. Izuku kept doing it over and over, destroying and rebuilding Kai Chisaki's body. Little by little, he was learning how the quirk worked and how to properly put a human form back together. Izuku kept thinking about how Eri's situation was a lot like his own when he was a child. Unfortunately, no one could protect him from Bakugo's abuse. He had to sit there and take it. Everyone else just watched, and some even joined in. All of those memories reminded him of how much he hated Katsuki Bakugo. Izuku realized a long time ago that his childish admiration of his former bully was just a lie he told himself. He had subconsciously pushed down every bad feeling and thought he had back then, because he thought that was what a hero would do. It wasn't until he made his way through the criminal underground that he was able to open his mind and learn. He learned how to think like a villain, how to lie and trick people, and most importantly, how to hate. Izuku didn't hate like Tamura Shigaraki did. He was smart enough to use his hate to do something good. He hit everyone with his anger and hatred like a wrecking ball. Everyone he hurt with his anger and hatred deserved it. All Might wasted years of his life giving him hope for the future, a future where he could also be a hero. His lies destroyed so much of Izuku and took so much from him that it was only fair that All Might lose everything he had built up in return. He was now using his anger to hurt himself in the same way that Chisaki hurt that innocent child. He deserves it. They all deserve it. Izuku must have lost his focus in his anger because the count had reached 100 before he knew it. Izuku was out of breath as he looked down at the pile of blood, bones, and flesh that used to be Chisaki. He got on his knees and smashed the pile even more into meaty pieces. He then slapped it several more times angrily, using Overhaul, until all that was left was a splattered pile of blood that covered several panels of the training room. He stumbled for a second, but quickly got back up. As he was about to rub his face with his right hand, he noticed the red fluid that was covering it. That seemed to make what he just did work. I killed him. He turned away from the mess and threw up on the floor in front of everyone. Stain leaned over and whispered to Dabi, "Told you he was scared." While they watched their leader throw up, the scarred man whispered back, "He killed a man 100 times. Have any of us ever done something like that?" Izuku wiped his mouth on his sleeve when he was done. He finally remembered that he had 3 people listening, so he stood up straight and faced them. "I don't think I need to warn you 3 what will happen if you tell anyone about this," he said as a threat. This didn't happen. Kai Chisaki was thought to have been killed by Shigaraki when the League attacked the prison transport. Loud and clear, "Boss," Stain said with a sneer. He liked to role play with the kid instead of seeing himself as his boss. That was great. Toga rushed at him but was pushed away by something he couldn't see. Izuku glared at her as he left the training room and said, "Don't touch me." "Hey, what's with the bloody mess? I hope you're not expecting us to clean this up," Dabi called after him. "Remember, the training room is set up to clean itself," the gauntlet user spat over his shoulder as he left. When the others looked down, they saw that the panels that were covered in Kai Chisaki's bloody body parts were already pulling back into the floor and being replaced with clean ones. The whole building looked as clean as if there hadn't been a violent murder here. Izuku walked slowly and quietly to his room, his face fixed in concentration. He locked the vault door behind him and went into the bathroom, where he immediately took off all of his clothes and jumped into the shower, leaving only his infinity gauntlet on because he wouldn't dare risk taking it off for any reason. He washed off the blood, dried off, and put on clean clothes. He then went to his bed, took a deep breath, and thought about what he had just done. Izuku wasn't sure if Chisaki was still a person after what he did. He had helped Stain kill a few people in the past, but killing someone himself was a whole different thing. That man needed to die, though, because he needed to pay for what he did to Eri. Her situation was like his own when he was a child. No one saved Hima, so he told himself, one less monster in the world. Killing Chisaki was a necessary evil. He can't hurt her again. Izuku laid down in bed and grabbed his phone. He sent Mei a message telling her to wait until tomorrow because he needed to rest. The green-haired teen hadn't slept in almost 4 days. He closed his eyes, pushed everything out of his mind, and finally gave up. The dream. Izuku woke up in the same landscape as his last dream, but this time the 8 figures weren't facing him. Instead, they were in a circle, talking to each other. Izuku floated closer to hear what they were saying because they hadn't noticed him yet. Killed, murdered that, one of the figures said. Izuku winced because he couldn't make out their words because their voices sounded like they were going off. He could only get bits and pieces. Used that power like your brother, said someone else. The woman with dark hair said, shouldn't, interfered. Only way. His attention, said the leader with white hair who had tried to talk to him before. Wrong about, the woman said again. Let Maya, there's still a in him. She turned away from the group and looked straight at Izuku. With a hopeful smile, she reached out to touch him, which made the boy flinch and pull away. What do you need from me? He tried to say something, but nothing came out. He had just realized that he didn't have a mouth. She tried to say, but the dream ended there as everything went dark. Izuku sighed as he got out of his limousine. He stared up at the entrance of UA. With the threat he made to the principal after the fall of All Might, he honestly never expected to have to come here ever again. Izuku was surprised that they were even having a cultural festival. He thought that the commission would have shut that down because of the threat that the League of Villains still posed. That rat must have pulled some strings to get this. Izuku thought as he placed his sunglasses on. Why was he doing this again? He looked back into the seat of the car to see Eri in a red and white child's dress. That's right. That blonde fool Mirio Tagata thought that this would be a good idea. The other day, after he explained to Eri how quirks were not a curse and showed her a demonstration, the hero Lemillion decided to step inside and make his introduction. Eri seemed pleased to see the person who almost died trying to save her was safe, but had yet to show a truly positive show of emotions. Mirio was also glad that she was safe. After greeting her, the poor fool attempted to get the young girl to smile. He said that they all wanted to see her safe and smiling again. Much to both Izuku and Tagata's shock, they found that Eri had forgotten how to smile. Izuku didn't hold any hard feelings for Mirio. In fact, he found the older boy to be quite admirable and heroic. However, his idea to bring Eri to UA's cultural festival in attempt to cheer her up, give her back some of the childhood she missed thanks to Chisaki, while with the best intentions, Izuku felt might be a mistake. They just got Eri out of an awful environment. He didn't think surrounding her with more people that Izuku knew he couldn't completely trust, was such a good idea. Unfortunately, that look on her face when Mirio explained all the cool things that would be at the festival. That look of curiosity and hope was not something the Gauntlet user could deny. A few phone calls later, Midoriya and Eri were given permission to attend at Mirio's request. Izuku also made sure to get permission for a few extra guests as well. He didn't want to have to attend this thing alone. All right, Eri, we're here. Izuku held his hand out for her to take. Eri took his hand and quietly followed him up to the school's entrance. Another limo pulled up and out stepped Ochako aka Angel, dressed in a white long-sleeved shirt, sleeves rolled up, black plants and shoes. Sorry I'm late, she apologized. Uraraka wanted to have lunch with her parents that day, but also wanted to come with Izuku and Eri later. Something about saying hello to her friends. Actually, you're right on time. Izuku was glad that she made it. Todoroki didn't have any friends at UA and wanted to spend time training with Dabi, much to the pyromaniac's displeasure. Iida also wanted to train on that new treadmill that Mei Hatsume designed and built for him, so he elected to stay back at the base as well. Hi, you must be Eri. Uraraka smiled down at the little girl who hid behind the green-haired boy's leg. She's a little shy, Izuku surmised. This is a very good friend of mine, Eri, she won't hurt you. Hello. Eri stuttered out, taking a brave step out from behind him. Nice to meet you too. You can call me Ochako. She then turned her attention to the older boy. You know you didn't have to dress so formally. Unlike Izuku, the brown-haired girl was dressed casually. I like the suit, he replied with a shrug. Come here. Uraraka walked right into his personal space and undid his poorly done tie, loosening the top button before tossing it into the back seat of the limo. Eri watched the whole interaction curiously. Even a girl as young as her wondered if they were more than friends. There, that's better. Ahem. The sound of someone clearing their throat interrupted them. All three of them turned to see Shota Aizawa standing there at the entrance with the pro hero's hound dog and ectoplasm standing behind him. If you two are done, we can perform the security check. By all means, go right ahead. Izuku stared back him with an equally disinterested glare. Ectoplasm stepped towards the group with a handheld metal detector. He did a sweep over all three of them. Checking for weapons. He raised a brow at that. How ridiculous. As if I would carry a gun or a bomb when I have the most powerful weapon in the world strapped to my left arm. He chuckled at UA for their overly cautious methods. Speaking of which, we're going to ask for you to leave that with us. Hound Dog growled out, gesturing towards his gauntlet. Izuku took a few dangerous steps towards the towering hero. Aizawa nearly whipped out his capture scarf at the intimidating aura that Midoriya gave off. Sure. Izuku finally spoke, giving a friendly smile. Uraraka along with the three teachers' eyes widened in shock as he reached for his infinity gauntlet as if to take it off. Oh wait, he stopped. Would you also like me to give you my main base's secret access codes, or perhaps the location of the Titan shutdown system? Izuku spoke with the thickest of sarcasm. Get real. He mockingly smacked Hound Dog on the arm as he walked past the beastly hero. Eri quickly followed, wanting to stay close to him. Uraraka gave her former teachers an apologetic smile as she passed, trailing behind the two. Aizawa wanted to say something, but they had other matters with securing the school grounds to attend to. Plus he knew Midoriya wouldn't start any trouble. He was only here for that child and nothing else. Hey, you guys made it. Mirio appeared to be waiting for them. Izuku approached the third year. The annoying security check aside, the gauntlet user rolled his eyes. Lead the way. You three are going to love this. Class 1A has been practicing all week. Mirio explained as they walked. The older boy led them to a small concert theater where many other UA students were gathering. The four of them ended up somewhere in the middle of the crowd, with Mirio placing Eri on his shoulders so she could see better. Izuku silently watched as the room went dark and the curtains opened. The lights on stage came on, revealing Class 1A, some holding instruments, others looked to be backup dancers of some sort. Personally, he thought that the future heroes shouldn't be wasting time with such frivolity when they could be training, improving, and honing their skills. All that talk about going beyond, plus ultra, they said, yet here they were playing around like they were a band. At least the other hero schools took things more seriously. He thought that, but when the show went on, Izuku was honestly impressed by how entertaining it was. He actually had to resist waving his arms up like the rest of the crowd. He had too much dignity for that. However, Ochako and even Eri could participate as much as they wanted. He turned and watched Eri, who seemed anxious at first, but as the show continued she started to get into it. It was then that Izuku saw something miraculous. Eri's lips upturned into a smile. An actual honest-to-God smile. The most heartwarming smile he had ever seen. Even when Izuku saved her, even when he told her that Kai Chisaki was gone for good, she never once smiled. Caught up in all this excitement and positive energy, that Class 1A was what finally did it. Izuku was truly grateful to the hero students for this. Maybe having a festival and concert was a good idea. Perhaps he misjudged things. Did you like the show, Eri? Mirio asked as he set her down on her feet. The show was over and the crowd began milling out, talking about how awesome Class 1A was. It was amazing. Izuku, Ochako and Mirio smiled as the little girl went on a tangent about much fun she had. So what would you like to do next? Izuku asked as they left the area with the other students. He barely noticed the wide berth they were giving him. All of UA knew who he was and what he could do, and no one wanted to get on his radar. He could honestly care less though. They walked around the festival trying the various foods and playing some of the games. Much to Izuku's annoyance, Mirio Tagata challenged him to the obstacle course. At first the gauntlet user turned him down, having nothing to prove. However, Mirio replied with some good-natured playful taunting. Izuku knew he didn't mean anything, but his instinctual reaction led him to 4 words. Oh, it is on. Taking off the jacket of his suit, he handed it to Uraraka and rolled up the sleeves of his shirt. No quirks were allowed during the games, so Izuku couldn't rely on his gauntlet and Tagata couldn't use permeation, so it was a contest of who was more athletic. Unfortunately, a third-year hero student proved to be much more adept physically. While Izuku wasn't a skinny pushover like he was in middle school, his own muscular body couldn't keep up with Mirio's larger, well-trained, more impressive one. At least he made the older boy work for that win, coming up just behind him at the end of the obstacle course. Eri seemed to enjoy the friendly competition, so his pride taking the hit was worth it. After that game they went on to see the show that Class 1B was putting on. Some poorly written mashed-together production based off multiple movie franchises. Ripping off Western cinema, how original, he thought to himself. Throughout their little performance Izuku kept having to suppress a snort at how ridiculous it was. There was a moment where he almost started laughing out loud, but was stopped when Ochako gave him a gentle elbow jab in the arm that conveyed the simple message, "Don't be rude." Though after the show even Mirio was silent for once, not knowing what to say. Eri seemed to like it. Then again, children don't know the difference between good and bad theater, so it was fine. After the beauty contest, the four of them went back to the trying out the different games set up around the campus. Izuku stopped and turned when he felt Eri ceased moving. He noticed she was looking at something at one of the stands. Following her gaze, he saw that she was staring at a white stuffed unicorn, one of the prizes that the game offered. The little girl absent-mindedly reached for the small horn on her own head. "You like that?" Mirio blurted out, having also noticed what Eri was eyeing. "It has a horn like me," Eri said. She'd never seen a pony with a horn before. "Would you like one?" Izuku asked. He led her by the hand to the booth. It seemed to be a target shooting game run by a pair of students. "How do we win the unicorn?" he questioned the two boys. "5 tickets get you 5 shots. The first said. "Get 3 shots in a row, you get one of the lesser prizes. Get all 5 in a row and you can get any prize you want." Simple enough. Izuku pulled out a rather large roll of tickets that he purchased at the entrance. All proceeds went to charity since the school already had more funding than they knew what to do with. He bought one roll for himself so he could do whatever Eri wanted, and he bought one for Uraraka for whatever game or show she wanted to participate in. "Would the top U a student like to go first?" Izuku asked with a smirk. "Sure." Mirio smiled back, confident to the challenge. Izuku handed him 5 tickets and stepped out of his way. "This will be a piece of cake, which we will have later after I win this." He tried to joke. Bad at jokes, Izuku mumbled under his breath. He watched as Mirio Tagata easily got 4 out of 5 targets almost effortlessly. When he was about to get the last one, the green-haired teen very subtly used the reality stone on his gauntlet and with a single finger twitch just ever so slightly moved the dart off course, causing the older boy to miss the last shot. "Ah, that's a shame. No one saw that." No one but Uraraka, who silently narrowed her eyes at Izuku in a disapproving yet playful manner. "I know what you did." Her eyes conveyed. "What?" The gauntlet user noticed her look and mouthed the question. She said nothing, but gave him a look that told him not do that again. "Man, I was sure I had that." Mirio sighed dejectedly. "Let me give it a try." Izuku stepped forward, placing the tickets on the table. Looking at the targets and darts in his hand, his mind rapidly calculated how to get all 5. In a span of seconds he got all 5 targets. Mind over matter, brain versus brawn. Brain always wins. The gauntlet user smirked at his victory over Mirio. "I'll take the unicorn please." The student quickly got the prize and handed it to the director. Izuku passed it to Eri, noticing it was almost half the size of her body. The little girl smiled and cuddled the stuffed animal to her body. The adorable scene moved all 3 of them. Heart-a-melting. That was all Izuku thought as he fought the urge to clutch his chest. After a while Ochako disappeared, having been pulled away by Mina Ishido to go hang out with her friends from UA. Mirio took Eri to go on a ride, leaving Izuku to take a break by himself. Despite being alone, he knew he was far from it. Every security camera and hero on staff was watching his every move, he deduced. He didn't care. Even if he wanted to cause a problem, they couldn't stop him either way. Not that he had any bad intentions. Green Eyes then spotted a head of gravity-defying purple hair, also sitting alone at a bench not too far from himself. He smirked at the familiar person and went to go join him. The boy noticed him approach and unlike all the other students didn't panic or stare with fear and apprehension. Shinso Hitoshi. A pleasure to see you again. Izuku greeted him. Director Midoriya. Shinso replied. I'm surprised you remember me. I remember every student I find interesting. Izuku sat down next to him without permission. I noticed that you weren't in either of the hero class little shows. They still haven't transferred you, I see. Shinso clenched his fist, taking a deep breath to calm himself. It was a sore subject, which Izuku could tell, so he decided to press further. Even after the sports festival, you made it farther than any of the general education students. Are they not even considering you? They are. The purple-haired boy corrected. Aizawa-sensei has been giving me some private lessons and the support studio is making me something to complement my quirk. Tell me more. Izuku leaned in, hungry for more information. The student with the brainwashing quirk went on to explain that Erasure Head was teaching him how to use a capture scarf, the same weapon that the underground hero wielded. He also told him about the voice-changing device to wear around his mouth the support class was working on that he requested. Izuku hummed to himself in thought. That's a very good start, but it's not enough. Not to sound rude, but what do you mean not enough? Shinso looked at him with tired eyes. As I said, you're looking in the right direction with that voice-changing device, but I think you should go even further. Izuku's brilliant mind already went through all the possibilities and potential that his brainwashing quirk could do. Don't waste time with such a complex capture weapon. You should focus more on trickery and deception like with the voice changer. Learn how to throw your voice like a ventriloquist. Tell nobody how your quirk works, not even your friends, colleagues or loved ones. You need to be like a magician and tell no one your secrets. Have disguises, alternate identities. You could be a dozen different heroes and nobody would know. Shinso's eyes widened at the long-winded analysis about how he should be using his quirk and the kind of hero he could be. How the hell? The general course student wondered where all this came from. Oh, I'm extremely good at quirk analysis. Izuku explained simply. I've been doing it since childhood and used this talent a lot during my time as a villain. Made quite a lot of money at it in fact. He thought it was funny that a skill ignored and underappreciated by heroes and civilians in society, was in fact cherished and highly valued by villains. How ironic. Thank you for the tips I guess. Contrary to his apathetic tone, he was enormously grateful for any advice he could get his hands on. He was already so far behind the hero students. Look, Aizawa is the homeroom teacher of Class 1A, so I'm guessing those private lessons don't happen as frequently as you like. Izuku spoke as he reached into the pocket of his jacket. If you want more focused training and state-of-the-art support items, come to the city office of my department. He handed the student his card. Tell them your name and that you know me. I'll personally arrange whatever you need. Shinso looked down at the card in his hand. Knights of Balance. The hero training program of the HRD. All I'll think about. He sounded interested, but a bit hesitant. That's all I ask. Izuku smiled at him. Think about it, consider your options and come to me if you decided you want more than what this school can do for you. I see a lot of potential in you, Shinso Hitoshi, and would like nothing more than for you to properly flourish and become all that you could be. With that he bid Shinso farewell and went to go catch up with Mirio and Eri. Later that evening after everything was over it was time to leave. Eri, despite her time here being over, was still smiling and happy. Don't forget your new friend. Izuku, using the reality stone, picked up the stuffed unicorn that she dropped and made it trot over to the girl as if it was alive. Eri grabbed her precious gift and held it close so as to not drop it again. Thank you, Tagata. This was a real treat and I'm glad you suggested it. The Gauntlet user held his right hand out for him to shake. Mirio was never intimidated by Midoriya like many others, so he eagerly took the offered hand, returning the gesture. You're welcome. Mirio beamed at him. This only further proved his belief that there was good inside Izuku Midoriya. He wasn't all just dark ambitions and cruel intentions like everyone thought. Maybe that future Sursaw could be prevented after all. There didn't have to be a battle. Elsewhere, About a mile from the city office of the HRD. In a dark, dank alley, a windowless van sat parked in the shadows. The vehicle stayed unseen and unnoticed by the city around it. The security is tight. The voice of a young girl spoke from within, the clacking of a keyboard following her words. The system is almost impenetrable. Almost. The voice of an older man said. Yes, there is a window of opportunity. The girl explained. We'll only get one attempt, so we'll have to pick the right moment. Well done, my dear. The man praised. We can infiltrate the department office and escape without Director Midoriya being none the wiser. Are you sure this is a good idea, gentle? The girl didn't sound too on board with this plan. Director Midoriya and his department was not someone to be trifled with. Of course, La Brava, he said enthusiastically. We're about to attempt something that even the bravest villains wouldn't dare try. After this, our names will go down in history. The man theatrically proclaimed. He was so sure of his success. When Izuku heard the news on his phone, he smiled. So Kurogiri was caught then. The commission wouldn't give him information they thought he didn't need, but his police informants were more than happy to do what they were told. Even though this was good news for everyone, he secretly didn't like that the bartender who was warping was arrested. He really needed the league to last a little longer, and they won't be able to do much without their escape. He turned off his phone and said, "Thank you." Now where were we? He asked as he looked over at Stain, who was frozen in the middle of an attack and being held still by a blue aura. I know we are training, but if you had just let me answer the phone, I wouldn't have had to lock you in space. Izuku looked pleased. He freed the hero killer from his control by letting go of the space stone's power. The man didn't waste any time and attacked him right away with his sword. With Endeavor's stolen quirk, Izuku made a wall of flames that scared him away. Stain made fun of her as he dodged the flame. I thought you wanted a simple exercise. Izuku smiled and said, I'm sorry, am I pushing you too hard? The killer ran at him while fireballs were flying at him. The person who was wearing the gauntlet rose into the air. He moved away from the man's blade, pointed his right hand at him, and used two strange tricks of the soul stone. A big ball of crystals came out of one of his limbs and almost buried the hero killer. What the hell? Stain asked as he dodged the attack. It covered such a large area that it was hard to get away from, even in the big, open training room. Izuku pulled it back and then pulled it out again. The boy said, Crystal plus overgrowth. The killer started hacking away at it with his sword, taking out pieces with each swing, saying, what a wonderful combination. Izuku tried to make it stronger by using the power stone, but One for All wouldn't work with him again. It was happening more often lately, and he still hadn't found the source of the problem. He did finally figure out that this glitch only happened when he put the soul and power stones together. Heavy drill, jauntification, and hell flame. The crystals quickly went back into Izuku's body, and his whole right arm turned into a big flame drill. His now weaponized limb helped him defend himself against Stain's charge. The man's sword hit his fire-clad drill and bounced off of it. Izuku just gave him a smirk and pointed his shield to the left. He launched Stain to the left with Vector, and the copied power of All for One again. Even though he had a little blood on his nose, Izuku didn't care. He pressed his attack and pointed his weapon at the killer. As Stain leaned against the wall of the training room, a huge flame drill was right next to his face. The man glared and said, I win. The teen smiled. Stain spat, of course you won. Nobody can match up to that kind of power. I don't mean to be rude, but that was the point, Izuku said. Fine, then what's the point? You don't even need it anymore, the killer asked. Izuku shrugged as he turned off the quirks, putting his arm back to normal and wiping the blood off of his nose. I like to keep my skills sharp. 3 quirks. The short use of the 4th one almost caused an overload, he said. It was always risky to use too many quirks with the soul stone at the same time. Anyway, that's enough for today. I need to get ready. Stain said in a rude voice, you're still going to that damn hero ranking event. Izuku agreed with him and said, I don't like it either. The Prime Minister pretty much forced him to go to this event. If it were up to me, I'd get rid of it all. But I don't have the political power to do that right now. Because Toriyama was in charge of the hero ranking division and knew how much he didn't like it, he made it clear that he had to go. He thought it was a small way to get back at Midoriya for what he did to get him where he was now. Izuku stopped and looked at his loyal shadow. One more thing, Stain. He told her, once you're done finding the rest of the trigger supplies, I want you to look into this Meta Liberation Army. This was her next secret job. I just want to know where they are and what they hope to accomplish. As Stain picked up his blades from the floor of the training room, he said, I've heard of them. Some cult-like organization. Izuku turned away and said, of sorts. When I was Apotheosis, I wasn't interested in them, but from what I've heard, I want to know if they might become a problem in the future. The hero killer just stared at him for a moment and then nodded to agree to his mission. Otherwise, Iida frowned as he walked by the big, scary Titan robot that stood at the front door of his family home. One of only a few people sent to watch over the area and keep his family safe. These soulless metal machines were meant to take the place of heroes that Midoriya thought were fake. The boy saw his brother waiting for him in a wheelchair when he walked into the house. Tensai was getting the care that Midoriya had promised. It took a lot of work on the bionic exoskeleton and physical therapy for the former hero to be able to walk normally again. His brother said, Tenya. His answer was, Tensai. It's good to see you. Chihi smiled at him and said, you too. Everyone else is gone. Let's talk. It's been a while since I've seen you. He wheeled himself into the living room, and Tenya followed him. So how are things at the HRD? Tenya replied without emotion, training is going well. Director Midoriya wants to send us on trial patrols soon. Now Tensai asked, how are things really going? In order to get an honest answer. He looked his brother straight in the eye and said, I don't. Tenya sighed and said, I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. I don't believe that Midoriya is evil, but I know he's doing something behind the scenes that he's not telling us. The sensei asked, like what? She replied, he has bad guys working for him, and they're out there doing who knows what. His information doesn't just come from nowhere. The only reason I joined his organization in the first place was so I could get inside and find out his secrets and hopefully put a stop to him and whatever he's planning. He told the younger boy, Tenya, I don't think Midoriya is the bad guy that people are making him out to be. Yes, he did a lot of bad things to get where he was that I can't agree with. However, his department has done a lot of good for society. You haven't seen what I've seen though. You don't know the real danger he poses to society. Tenya spoke up. He got cold when he thought about the few things he had learned. I've seen the good things he's done too, but there is a dark side to his organization. He's ruined the lives of anyone who defies or doesn't agree with him. He's blackmailed and extorted people to get more political power and influence. I'm scared of what will happen if this continues. All that power shouldn't be in the hands of someone as morally ambiguous as Midoriya. That's why I think we need to stop him soon before it's too late. He said, well, I can't help you with that, but there's someone here who can. There was a knock on the living room door before he spoke. The underground hero and former teacher to Tenya Iida was there when the door opened and said, come in. The engine quirk boy was shocked to see the man here and said, Aizawa-sensei. He told him, Iida, it's good to keep you safe. Sorry about the sudden visit, but it was the only way to meet with you without Midoriya knowing. He had to camp out all night outside and wait for a window in the Titan's patrols to slip inside. Tensai told us. Aizawa told him, Nezu decrypted your message. Tenya Iida answered, so what do you got for us? He then went on to tell them everything he had learned while he was in the department. He said with anger in his eyes, the masked agent. It is the hero killer Stain. He hated having to train and work with the person who put his brother in a wheelchair in the first place. There are two more though. Dabi and Himiko Toga are also part of this. The hero of the underground world asked, weren't those two part of the League of Villains? Why are they working for Midoriya? As far as I know, Dabi doesn't have anything to do with the League anymore and exclusively answers to Midoriya. Himiko Toga on the other hand seems to be still affiliated with them and is acting as a go-between. Tenya told me. That's scary that he's still in touch with the League, Aizawa said, frowning at the possible outcomes. Iida began, there's one more thing. That special project. The one that All Might fought and defeated on the day of his fall. Hatsume and Midoriya have made a new and improved one and are planning to release it in a few days. Aizawa said in a serious tone, Nemesis. It was shocking and impressive that the first machine could hold out against the top hero for so long. He had no idea what the new version would be like. The public was going to be able to get that thing. The next evening, Izuku let out a sigh as he watched the 10 best heroes take the stage. They all said something short, but he barely paid attention to any of them. Until Hawk's turn came around. The champion with wings said, "Wow, I never thought I'd make it to the top." As Izuku watched on, he thought to himself, you only got that spot because All Might and Endeavor are out of the picture. Hawks looked up at Midoriya, who was in his own skybox above the crowd. We've been through a lot, haven't we? The whole hero business got shook up. Izuku looked back at him with a sharp eye. It was the same day that we lost our first number 2 hero that we got a new government department. About our new department director, I'd like to say. The Gauntlet user leaned in to hear what the man had to say about him. He said, his changes to our society and system have done wonders for everyone. The heroes in the crowd were shocked, and Izuku himself wasn't expecting him to say that. I would just like to thank him for everything. I'm glad we can all live a little easier with him watching over us. Izuku thought, interesting, as he watched the new number 1 hero finish his speech. When the hero billboard was done, the top 10 heroes were invited to the lounge area upstairs to hang out with each other. The conversation was cut short when the door opened and Director Midoriya walked in. Everyone in the room went silent as green eyes landed on each of them. The eyes first rested on Hawks for a moment before moving on to Mirko, the rabbit hero. He moved slowly toward her, which made her and everyone else tense up. Hawks looked at Midoriya and almost flew away when he reached into his suit pocket. Hello, Mirko. Is it too much trouble? He took out a small notebook with a pen in the middle of each page. To ask for an autograph. The rabbit hero was confused and said, Huh, are you saying this for real? Izuku rubbed the back of his head and said, this is embarrassing. You were always one of my favorite heroes. I always wanted to meet you and ask for your signature. If you wouldn't mind. Okay. Mirko hesitated, but he decided to do what was asked of him. When it came to people with the same power as the commission president, she couldn't really say no. Izuku laughed as he looked at her signature. I like how you gave the bunny ears. I'll always treasure this, thank you. Mirko thought to herself, that was as weird as shit, but she didn't say it out loud. The person who used the gauntlet put his notepad away and left her there, speechless. After that, he went up to Hawks. Along with a smirk, he said, let me guess. You also want an autograph from me. To be blunt, Izuku said, oh no. You're too flashy for my tastes. You're an alright hero though. Keigo said, okay, I'll be the new number 1 hero. You do realize the only reason you have the spot is because I removed All Might and Endeavor. Izuku told him. And I'd like to thank you for that. Hawks tried to suck him up again, which made him feel sick. After that, he remembered what the commission's head had told him to do. While you're attempting to infiltrate the League of Villains, you also need to pretend to be on Midoriya's side. We believe he's still in contact with them, we just need evidence. You need to get that evidence. If he thinks you agree with him, you just might be able to slip under his radar. Hawks heard Izuku say under his breath, enjoy it while it lasts. What do you mean by that? The hero had to think about it. He needed to get in touch with the League more. The faster he could prove that Midoriya was still working with bad guys, the faster they could catch him and put him in jail. Izuku said, excuse me. He then took out his personal phone, which was vibrating, and looked at it. Hawks asked with a raised eyebrow, trouble? The person in the gauntlet put his phone away and said, no, just a glitch. So do you mind if I asked you a bit about your quirk? Sure. What do you want to know? Hawks asked in a friendly voice. HRD. City office. The office was closed while Midoriya was at the event that night. No one was in the building because all the employees had already left. There was no security at all at night. All of it was automated and done by machines. The building was locked up tight. Almost. A little girl whispered, 3, 2, 1, now. One of the big metal doors to the loading bay opened just wide enough for a grown-up to fit through. The door opened quickly, and an older man and his younger companion ran through it, calling out, "Hurry, Gentle." The man known as Gentle Criminal was proud to say, "We did it, La Brava. Your wonderful skills have allowed us to infiltrate directly into the heart of the Hero Regulation Department. I didn't do it all by myself. I just found a security hole," he said. La Brava blushed at his compliment. It wasn't hard to set up the door to open just a crack so that it would be seen as a glitch instead of a break-in and not set off the alarms. The two of them walked through the rather large loading bay. He looked around and asked, "Now where are we?" La Brava said, "It's a loading area for something." The two of them walked up to what looked like an elevator with no walls that could fit 20 big men. "I think this is where the robots come and go." Danjiro asked, "And where does this go, I wonder?" The little girl said, "I don't know. We should go up to the offices like we planned, Gentle." "Yes, La Brava, we will. But first I need to satisfy my curiosity." They got on the lift together. La Brava was scared about where this could lead, but Gentle Criminal couldn't wait to find out what secrets Director Midoriya had hidden down here. When the man pressed the only button on the panel, the elevator started moving them down to the level below the building. When the elevator stopped, a dark hallway came into view. When Gentle took a brave step forward, the automatic lighting system turned on and showed her the only way forward. "Just a quick peek and we'll go back upstairs and film our shots," he told us. La Brava went down the hall after him. That's when they came across a big metal door. "Oh well, I guess we have." She was about to say more when the door opened itself. She was hopeful that it was locked so they could get back. The two thieves went inside and walked along what looked like a wide catwalk made of metal grates. As they looked over the edge, they saw something strange. A huge number of rows of Titan robots were set up. There were some red, yellow, green, blue, gray, and white ones among the black ones. There was even a troop whose armor looked like it was clear and whose inner parts were white. The girl said with some worry, "This must be where they store the robots." "Gentle, we should go now." La Brava, get the camera out. "This is where we'll film our video," Gentle told her, not caring about what she thought. He was excited to make what would soon be his biggest accomplishment. La Brava did what she was told and took the camera out of her bag. She said in a low voice, "We're rolling." There was a gentle smile. "Good evening, my most wonderful viewers." La Brava moved the camera to look at the robots that were not working below and said, "Take a good look." He began to walk further along the catwalk as he said, "We have successfully infiltrated the Hero Regulation Department. Not a single villain in today's society would dare attempt this for fear of being caught and having their quirk taken away by Midoriya himself." The man said loudly. He said, "I, Gentle Criminal, have no such fear. With my skills and the help of my wonderful assistant, I shall make my escape, and Midoriya will have no idea that his base of operations was broken into." He thought about all the attention this would get him on the internet. When this was posted, his views and subscribers would go through the roof. "Now, shall we?" He stopped when he got to a big round platform that was connected to by 3 more catwalks. In the middle was a round metal pod that was clearly hiding something. It was all very clear that it was important. "Is there a way to open this? I want to see what's inside." La Brava tried to say, "Gee Gentle, I don't think we should be messing with that." Gentle found a button and said, "Aha." He pressed it right away, even though he didn't know what it did. As the cylinder rose up, a number of red lights started to flash. A cold mist came out of the pod and touched the two criminals' skin, making the air around them cold. After the fog cleared, they could finally see what was inside the pod. A Titan robot that is different from all the others below. This one was much bigger and had gold armor on its body. The face of the head looked a bit like a human's, with 2 eyes, a hole for a mouth, and long triangular plates on the sides that looked a bit like horns. "What is this?" Danjiro asked as he carefully looked at the huge, tall robot. La Brava saw this and thought, "I think this is the new nemesis." Director Midoriya promised a new one soon, after All Might defeated the first version. So this is Midoriya's new idea of balance. the most advanced anti-villain robot ever made. It's the only one of its kind. This machine looked very scary and strong. Gentle finally realized that they had been there for too long and thought that now would be a good time to leave. They got out of the robot and said, "Let's just film our escape." They were eager to get back to the elevator and leave before they were caught. They didn't notice the eyes glow a strange blue while their backs were turned away from the golden machine. The man was halfway across the catwalk when all of a sudden, a huge metal hand grabbed him from behind and threw him back the way they came. She yelled, "Be careful," as he hit the metal railing. She stopped moving when Nemesis turned its attention to her. When she looked up at the thing that was so tall, she was scared. The camera was shaking in her hands. From its point of view, the machine was quickly scanning her because it knew she was with the bad guy and wanted to see if she was a threat. In that case, the computer came up negative in an instant. Nemesis told them to stay back. Its voice was rough and deep. It walked away from her and toward Gentle Criminal. The man gave a painful grunt as he got up from being thrown. He turned around just in time to see the robot coming at him. He used his quirk to make a rubber wall in the air between them out of the blue. When the armored machine realized what had happened, it pulled back its fist that had stretched the barrier. Once Gentle had turned the metal grating under Nemesis into rubber, he jumped over it and landed safely next to La Brava. He yelled, "We need to run, my dear." They turned around and ran away the way they came in. Emitter type, air and surfaces, gain the ability to stretch, Nemesis said again. It could quickly understand quirks based on what it sees and experiences thanks to the quirk analyzing AI that Izuku programmed into it. Its shoulder armor came off to reveal a cannon that fired at the running bad guys and sent a football-sized capsule flying. Gently rebound. Gentle made another wall out of clear rubber to block the attack and kept running. The capsule hit something and then blew up into a mess of Midoriya's special trap foam. As Nemesis began to run toward them, he growled, "Long-range attacks don't work." When the robot jumped over the stretchy wall, it made a straight line for the Gentle Criminal and La Brava. As they went through the metal doors that led to the Titan storage room, she yelled, "Get through the door." La Brava saw a button that looked like it would close something and pressed it. Luckily it was, and the doors began to shut on the person who was after them. As Nemesis got close to the closing doors, its big metal hands reached through the space where the doors should have been and grabbed the edges. They then opened the doors with surprising force. The metal groaned as sparks flew out, which probably hurt the door mechanisms. "We're almost there." Gentle picked up his partner and used his ability to bounce across the floor to get a ways. When they got to the lift that brought them down, they pressed the button to go back up. Nemesis got to the shaft as they were running away and looked up as the lift went up. Its feet and back lit up with exhaust flames, which launched it into the air after its prey. The two bad guys got off the elevator just in time for the robot to punch through it. The Gentle Criminal and La Brava ran out of the room. The little girl took out her laptop and tried to break into the door again, just like she did before. It was just wide enough for them to get out without setting off the alarm. They did, however, launch a capsule at each other, which exploded and blocked the exit with trap foam. They stopped and turned around to face the machine that was coming at them. La Brava was scared and asked, "What do we do?" Danjiro made up his mind, "We have no choice now. We have to fight." She told him, "But Gentle." Director Midoriya said that this thing was made to fight some of the stronger bad guys. She loved and respected him, but she knew he wasn't a top-tier bad guy. He said with pride as he walked up to the robot with more confidence, "Yes, but I doubt it was designed to fight me." When Nemesis stood over him and made an intimidating shape, he said, "Give up, villain." "I'm sorry, robot, but I have a goal to reach that I can't do if I'm locked up." Gentle Criminal jumped out of the way just as the machine was about to grab him. He hit the floor, ceiling, and walls of the loading bay several times with his strange ability, bouncing around the robot in circles, looking for a way to get around it. Within seconds, Nemesis was able to figure out his path and use its arm to close in on him as it jumped out of the air. As the robot stomped over to the man's body and put its big metal foot on his back, pinning him to the floor, La Brava yelled for her friend, "Be gentle." When he tried to stand up, Nemesis pushed forward with his foot to keep him down. The robot pulled a pair of cuffs out of a compartment on its leg and said, "Resistance is useless." Gentle frowned and looked over at his partner in crime. "Not completely useless. Be gentle," La Brava cried as she watched the self-driving machine handle him. She said, "I love you," out loud. She said that there was a pink aura around Gentle Criminal's body. He suddenly became much stronger, so he stood up and threw Nemesis off of him. The gold-armored robot wasn't scared, he just changed his strategy based on what he learned. It quickly figured out that the girl it had first thought wasn't a threat was the one who was giving her more power, and it went after her. Its arm turned into a cannon, and it fired a blast of compressed air right away. "Watch out, sweetheart." Gentle quickly grabbed her and dove out of the way of the blast. His quirk let him avoid a few more blasts when he needed to, and he did all of this while holding La Brava in his arm for safety. When Danjiro got close to the robot, he punched it hard in the face. It was only a little to the right that the head was turned. Nemesis only turned its head back and kept working its way up. Her words were, "Gentle, we can't win this." They saw that her love quirk wasn't enough to beat this machine monster. "It looks like you're right, La Brava," Gentle said. "So we'll have to make a grand escape." When Nemesis tried to throw a capture net at them, La Brava told them, "We need to get upstairs." She told him in his ear, "We can lose it in the offices and then get out through the main door." "That's a great idea," Gentle said with a smile as they made the plan. He dove out of the way of the robot's big arms swipe, but he wasn't ready for the kick powered by its feet. Lucky for her, he threw La Brava just in time, and she took the full force of the kick. As he was thrown across the room and into a wall, the man yelled in pain, "Gah!" It seemed like Nemesis was even scarier than before when he said, "Warning, further resistance will result in more forceful measures to ensure your capture." When it took a step toward the bad guy, its leg went rubbery, and it almost fell over. The same leg that kicked the person. When they touched, he must have used his quirk on the whole mechanical limb. "Let's go." He sped past the robot when he saw that it had temporarily slowed down, picked up La Brava while she was still having her effect, and made a beeline for the doors that led deeper into the building. They went through what looked like a utility hall, which had pipes running along the walls and ceiling. When they saw an employee elevator, they felt better and quickly made their way to it. They were happy for a short time until Nemesis came around the corner and started limping after them. Before they got in the elevator, though, the robot used one of its new features as the doors shut. It put out its hand and, with a magnetic energy beam coming from its palm, tore the doors off from a distance. That was close. The lift went up without a door, getting away from the persistent machine. When they got to one of the office floors, they found themselves in a dark room full of cubicles. Since they had nowhere else to go, the two bad guys chose to hide among the cubicles. He tore the elevator doors open and pushed his way through. It looked around the room with its head moving left and right. The robot began to walk around the cubicles, and by this time, its leg was almost back to normal. Gentle said in a very low voice, "Go that way." Sadly, it wasn't quiet enough because Nemesis' sound scanner picked it up and quickly found the source. The cubicle walls and desks didn't slow it down, it went right through them all. Gentle screamed, "Run!" as they ran out of another door that he kicked open with his newfound strength. Nemesis didn't even stop to duck under the threshold. As it chased them, its head tore through the wall like it was made of paper. As they ran, they went into a break room and more offices. La Brava yelled, "Where's the exit?" It looked like this place was a maze. At least the robot got lost with all the turns and twists. After a lot of searching, they finally found an emergency stairwell. They were about to win when Nemesis blew through a wall a few levels below. He knew where they were going and decided to stop them. It looked up at them with glowing blue eyes that looked menacing. To the roof, he carried them up the stairs using his elasticity quirk to bounce off the walls and gain speed. This was the last of the strength that La Brava's quirk gave him. Nemesis didn't follow them, which was strange. It just went right back through the hole it made. Gentle yelled, "We made it." He had never had to work so hard to get away before. As soon as they opened the last door to the roof of the building, all of their hopes went away for good. Well, this is quite a surprise. I certainly didn't expect this. Izuku Midoriya, the director of the HRD, was standing in the middle of the helipad in his spotless gray suit, his arms crossed over his chest as he laughed at the two people who had broken in. La Brava held on to Gentle Criminal's leg and shook as she asked, "But how?" "I was so careful not to trip the security alert." Izuku smiled at her and said, "And you didn't, young lady." Nemesis on the other hand. Well, since he's not plugged into the Nexus, he's technically always active, and when he engaged you, his AI sent me a little message that an intruder had entered the building. He told me, "So I give you A for getting around the building's security, but you didn't know that the robot could spy on you, did you?" He asked as he watched them slowly climb to the edge of the roof. "Who are you talking about?" Nemesis suddenly appeared from over the edge near where they were standing. Its jets made it hover in the air. Gentle and La Brava ran away in fear. They knew they were trapped when the robot landed on the roof. "Oh my, it looks like you two are in a tough spot." He waved his infinity sword around, its stones glowing in a scary way. He asked himself, "Am I the rock or the hard place?" His smile got even bigger. Gentle moved to the other side of the building and got ready for his last attempt to get away. His quirk made it easy for them to jump to another building, and if they moved quickly enough, they might be able to get away from Midoriya and his robot. When Izuku saw what they were about to do, he told them, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Gentle smiled back, "Well then, it's a good thing you're not me." La Brava, hold on tight. She did what he said, and he jumped off the building. They had only gone a few feet when a yellow bubble encased the roof and everything around it, freezing everyone except the person who cast the bubble. After setting off the time stone, Izuku sighed and said, "I told you." He floated above them and did nothing but wait for the effect to wear off. As soon as it did, he pointed his right hand at the two criminals and used some of the power stone's stored energy. As soon as they were free, he flicked his finger at them, sending them flying back up to the roof and right into Nemesis's waiting arms. There were two of them when the machine grabbed them both with its big hands and pinned them to the floor. Gentle didn't have any problems after he accepted his loss. There was no way to trick or beat Midoriya, so there was no point in fighting anymore. It looks like this is where his dream would end. The Nemesis said, "Villain capture complete." Izuku slapped his hands together and said, "Well done." This small break-in was perfect for testing the robot in the field for the first time. He couldn't help but think about how well Nemesis would do when it came out into the world. His plans for the future were getting closer to coming true.
So that's it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.